And welcome back to Coach's Corner. It is a Monday, it is July 8th, and we are back from vacation. We do have a show coming tomorrow. It is a pre-recorded show that I did back last Friday. I was going to kind of tease it, maybe do it last week. Ended up recording a little bit later, which is A-okay. We got a great show still to come out for tomorrow. But I had to come on Monday here. I had to, we took the week off, July 4th. It was a beautiful holiday. I sound like Trump. It was a beautiful holiday. It's the best holiday. Either way, we are back with a new episode of Coach's Corner. We have a decent amount to get to. I'm not going to do, normally in previous versions of this show, I have done kind of a player-by-player analysis where I'm like, okay, Isaiah Hartenstein, he went to OKC. How does that affect OKC? But we're going to, we've revised the show. We've made it a 3-topic show. And we got to start off with the first one. It is, I think, the biggest deal that did happen over free agency. It's something that I think probably impacts the most regarding teams and like how this certain team will now be perceived. But in the end, I don't think it does a single thing for how their season will ultimately end, like it always does, with them being big fat losers. That is the team up in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love that I have a lot of brotherly hate for. The Philadelphia 76ers grabbed Paul George to be their small forward, basically to be the guy that they want running next to Joel Embiid, being the guy that they think can take them over the top, which is the conference finals, because they haven't been to the conference finals. So they did the process. They trusted the process. They're like, we're going to go through the worst stretch of basketball that I think any eyes of humanity has ever seen. They did it successfully. They got the first top 3 pick 3 years in a row, and they failed on 2 of those 3 picks, but one of them was Joel Embiid, and they were very happy about that. They've made multiple playoffs with him. They haven't gotten over the hump. They haven't won a single thing. They haven't even been to the conference finals, which, once again, that is shocking for a team that always is like, we're contenders, we're the guys, we're going to be right there with the Celtics. What do? Flame out before the conference finals and just don't even get there at all. And they've been chasing this, I'd say, for a while. I mean, they got, like I said, Ben Simmons was the running mate with Joel Embiid and thought he was going to be the next LeBron. Clearly that has not worked out. They traded for Jimmy Butler early and probably what was Philadelphia's best chance at getting to conference finals or an NBA finals. Didn't work out. They didn't pay him. They paid Tobias Harris. Jimmy Butler walks. They haven't really even been close to the conference finals when Jimmy Butler's been to 2, and one of them is a little asterisk-y, but even then, I got to give him a little bit of credit. He's been to the conference finals. I mean, hey, what do I know? It's just, he's just an MVP of the league. Oh, wait, probably an undeserving MVP, if you ask me. He probably should have given it to Jokic for what would have been 4 straight years now, but alas, he doesn't get that nod because Joel Embiid bitched and moaned about not being the MVP, and he gets it, and then he just flames out in the playoffs like he always does. And he comes back again this year, his knee's broken again, doesn't get far. Tyrese Maxey actually has a great playoffs. It's like Tyrese Maxey could be the running mate. And you know what? They're like, we need another one because this big loser that always loves to get hurt around playoff time just can't handle it. And so maybe this guy can shoulder the load. And you know what? I think he will. I think Paul George will be a fine player to have in Philadelphia. I think he's definitely an upgrade over Tobias Harris, which is, not saying much, but he's still going to help out a lot more there. But then when you think about, great winners of the sport over the past decade of players, do you think of Paul George? Do you think of the guy who doesn't ever hit game-winning shots? Do you think of Paul George as the closer for any playoff game that you need, like any playoff series you need? I don't think you do. And that's because he's not. He's just a very good complementary player. He is what probably a lot of players should aspire to be, and that's a great two-way wing on defense and offense. He has the bag to dribble the ball. He can be a playmaker. He can shoot very well. Frankly, I'd say Paul George is the perfect basketball player. But he has that gene that you just can't find in a lot of guys. And that is the clutch gene. I don't think it's any secret Paul George is not a clutch player. And He hasn't been his entire career. He, led the Pacers to multiple number one seeds, I think, and just couldn't go up against LeBron. I mean, it happens to the best of us, but even then, had great teams, couldn't even get there. He was on this Clippers team. I mean, I even skipped over the Thunder team that he had with MVP Russell Westbrook at that time. Couldn't really get anywhere. Couldn't beat the Trailblazers or the Jazz. Okay. Then he gets to the Clippers, and he had one run, made to the conference finals one time. But in the end, Paul George doesn't have a lot to show for in his career when you look at winning. And I mean, that's easy to me say here just on a microphone, like, oh, he's not a winner or anything. But I mean, we've seen players like this where they're just really good in any spot but the playoffs. Like Carmelo Anthony, I feel like is a good example where, I mean, we can all acknowledge Carmelo Anthony is probably one of the best offensive players, scorers we've ever seen in the sport. I mean, we don't think about him as a lifetime career playoff winner. He had his runs. He made with the Nuggets a couple times, but we don't think of him like that. We think of him as just a very good player. I think Paul George kind of falls into that category where we'll look back and be like, that was a really good player, but could never get it done in the playoffs. And I mean, there are guys who get, I think, labeled as chokers more than just not good, playoff winners. Like James Harden is a playoff choker, where I don't think Paul George is that level, which is funny the Sixers had James Harden too, but I don't think Paul George is that level. But I mean, let's face it, he hasn't been a playoff winner since he's been in the league. And like I said, that's okay. That's okay. But for a team that's desperately dying for a playoff conference finals appearance, I don't think a player like Paul George, really turns up the notch to where you need him to be, like where the Knicks were, I think, this past year, where the Celtics are as we speak. Like, I don't think Paul George makes that Sixers, move into the next tier. I think they stay right in the tier where they were before. And like I said, I like the move they made with signing Caleb Martin more than I do Paul George, frankly. The money wise, and like, it just makes a little bit more sense to me. But hey, what do I know? And also, the thing about the Paul George deal is also it's a 4-year deal, paying him over $200 million, and it's kind of monopoly money in the NBA the way contracts are and look. But you have to imagine he's going to be 38 by the end of that contract if you hold on to him. And last time I checked, players don't age well. I mean, like we only have one player that's probably aged very well in his career, and that's LeBron James. And I mean, say what you will, a top 3 player of all time, top 2, whatever you want to say. Paul George is not LeBron James, and so, like I said, it's one of those deals that might age well. But as we sit here today, does that make the 76ers a much better team than what they were before? Do I think they match up better with the Celtics to be a contender? I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure it's a great idea for Paul George to come in and take shots away from Tyrese Maxey. And, I don't love Tyrese Maxey, but the way he played in the playoffs, I think you saw that the makings are there for the, clear number 2 player on that team. And does he maybe retain that number 2 status while Paul George slides into third? Maybe. But I don't know if Paul George has that mentality to fall back into the rest of the pack. We saw his own he's kind of shot himself in the foot. His own podcast, he talked about how he really doesn't want to get into the dirty business and do the dirty work, being a star and everything. It's like, we just watched Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum do the dirty work and end up winning the NBA Finals. So, and I'm going to be honest, I don't think, being the guy that doesn't do the dirty work in Philadelphia, I don't think that gives you a lot of good street cred with the fans. And so, I don't know. This just reeks of a deal that will age poorly. And the on-court product might look good, but when the chips are down and everything pushed in for high-stakes basketball, I don't know if I could trust a Paul George, Joel Embiid-led team. So that was the biggest deal of I think, impact on the court. The biggest impact, I think, in a sport that has a lot of stuff happening at all times, I think happened in Golden State. Something that I think is more at a macro level than a micro level. That is the potential end of the dynasty era in NBA basketball. And I feel like this gets said every couple of years, and then that new dynasty does eventually pop up and take over. But when you look at dynasties, true dynasties, and across the basketball, I think you can, if we trace it back, the Warriors, there was the Lakers, 2000s Lakers, the 90s Bulls, the 80s Lakers and Celtics, and that's really it. Those are four teams that I can list off the top of my head right now that were NBA dynasties for sure. And one of those dynasties we probably just watched end in real time. That is the Golden State Warriors. The Splash Brothers, which I think is probably the most fun offensive backcourt that we've ever seen. Like, I don't care about the new look, Luka and Kyrie, we just saw that ended in the finals. I think the most exciting backcourt we've ever seen, Klay and Steph, are no more. Klay Thompson has moved on to the Mavericks. We've seen a lot of breakups, I think, happen over the years. LeBron James left Dwayne Wade. Kyrie left LeBron. Like, a lot of LeBron-centric. Like, Kevin Durant left the Warriors. But it was one of those things where those guys, like, they weren't drafted together. Where Steph Curry has been a lifetime Warrior. Klay Thompson was a lifetime Warrior. Draymond is a lifetime Warrior. But the lifetime has ended. The Klay Thompson isn't a lifetime Warrior anymore. He's going to be a Maverick. And it's one of those things where it's sad to see end, but it felt like it was trending that way. Klay Thompson, since he was, basically injured in the finals he had back-to-back, like, season-ending injuries, like, it kind of felt weird. Like, it never felt like Klay could ever get back into his old self. Like, the defense wasn't really there anymore. The shooting would come and go. I mean, he obviously was still a great shooter when open, but he went 0 for 10 in the play-in game against the Kings. Like, it just wasn't the same. And so I think it could be the end of an NBA dynasty as we see it. And it's the end of Steph Curry as a contender as we see it. And it's shocking to say because you don't think of these guys as, their lifetime, statue players where they're going to be around in basketball history forever. But when you're living in the moment, it is shocking to, realize, damn, they're probably done as contenders because we saw Steph Curry and the Warriors win that NBA title over the Celtics, which kind of a weird passing of the torch moment that might have been. We saw that probably be the last title that Steph Curry will ever win, and it was his most impactful, I think, to his legacy when, being the guy, he was clear-cut the best player on the court, won the finals MVP, all that good stuff. And, I mean, to see it probably end there is kind of crazy. And, like I said, it's not like the Warriors can't build this team back up. They only have a couple of years probably left with Steph, but, I mean, it's not like they can't, make some couple moves. They don't look good right now, but losing Klay, I feel like, is that first domino of watching a team kind of, Scottie Pippen when he left the Bulls. Like, obviously, Jordan left the Bulls a couple times, but like once Scottie left the Bulls, that was like you knew that it was legitimately over. There was no chance of anything ever happening again for the Chicago Bulls and that iteration of the team. When Shaq left the Lakers, obviously I feel like the Lakers had a little bit of a different path where they ended up winning a couple more titles, post Shaq. But that iteration of the Lakers was done, and the Lakers were a little bit in the gutter for a while. So we're seeing that now with the Warriors, and watching it in real time, it just makes you think a little bit. It makes you ponder like what the dynasty era has been for the NBA and like what it did for it. And is it over? I don't know, because frankly, the Boston Celtics just, won their first title in this iteration of the team. They signed up all of those guys for like 4 more years, essentially, all of them. Like Tatum, Brown, Derek White, Drew Holiday, they're all there. The core is, at least for the next couple of years. And so how many more titles do they rattle off? Is the dynasty era truly over? Or are the Boston Celtics going to become that 5th team that I'll mention along with, those guys, or that 6th team that I mentioned along with the Warriors, Lakers, Celtics, like previous Celtics? Like, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. But if there's a team that could do it, I think it is that Celtics team. But yeah, the Warriors' time is over. And like I said, it's shocking to see. From an on-the-court perspective now, taking it to the micro level, I don't think Klay Thompson does much for the Mavericks. I really don't. Because I don't think shooting mattered, obviously, and I think they did miss that, but I don't think Klay Thompson in this current state is that offensive guy that they really need to step up. And I can see Luka getting him some looks. I don't know if Kyrie gets him more open than he was. He was fine in Golden State, but it's just I would be shocked to see this signing like kind of work out to be like, oh, that's a great value signing. This was a great deal. This is the one that put them over the edge. It would shock me if that happened. I don't think it's impossible, but Klay Thompson and the Mavericks, it has those feelings of like seeing Scottie Pippen on the Rockets or Hakeem Olajuwon on the Raptors. Like it has not great vibes to it. He's wearing 31. It's a little bit of a tricky situation that I'll be sad to see because, like I said, I think Klay Thompson's one of the more fun basketball players we've ever seen just because of how he moves off ball, doesn't dribble the ball, he just shoots it lights out. And I think we're seeing the end of that era and the end of Klay Thompson's career here as he winds down after multiple season-ending injuries in his later half, like his 30s. Like, I don't know, it's tough. But with one era ending, we have to shift to a new one. And the MLB might be doing that with the All-Star team as we see multiple players step in. And frankly, I think it's great because baseball is always I feel like the sport that's always looking for fans and always like, how do we move along this new era of baseball? And I don't think the on-field product is great because I think they mess with the baseballs too much. I don't think there's home runs are dying at the track. Like, I think there is a missing element of the on-field product, but there's still a ton of really, really exciting, fun players that are out there. And I think the MLB did a great job in picking reserves, that showcase the young talent that is coming up. Guys like Salvador Perez, who are 9-time All-Stars, like Chris Sale's an All-Star, and he's been there 8 times or something. Like, we see so many great older players that do continue to be all-stars, but there's a lot of new talent that's getting that one-year boost and guys that I think will stick around, like Garrett Crochet for the White Sox. I think it's good for him. Logan Gilbert, Tanner Houck, Mason Miller, Cole Ragans, Tariq Skubal. I feel like I'm messing up his name, but he's unbelievable pitch for the Tigers, and you would never know because it's the Tigers, But I think getting to the All-Star game is one of those things where it boosts you up and it boosts the Tigers up. Riley Green is a guy who made it as a reserve. Bobby Witt Jr., the Royals. Royals have a couple of guys here, Cole Ragans and Bobby Witt Jr. Ellie De La Cruz for the Reds. Like, these guys are getting that boost here where I think, they're making their first All-Star appearances. That could lead to many more. And I just think that's an exciting thing for baseball. And, a sport that struggles to market its players, I think they have a lot of guys they can work with here that maybe, like I said, aren't the flashiest, aren't the most exciting, but they are guys that can pop up and potentially be guys that people love to watch. Ellie De La Cruz is unbelievable player, unbelievably exciting player to watch. And I just think it's really cool to see him in the MLB All-Star game. And I'm always the guy that kind of looks for that. What's the next wave? It's kind of thinking 2 steps ahead, but I think that way with players, like what's going to be that next era. And, watching it in real time is cool. And the MLB doing what they did with the reserves, I think picking some of these guys who I think are deserving and young and marketable could be a good step forward. Now, like I said, they still have so much work to do. They are so behind on anything when it comes to marketing the sport and being good at that. I think they are, on their way to maybe fixing that. And once Rob Manfred leaves in 5 more years or 3 more years, whenever he goes, maybe the new guy that comes in will have a good foundation of players that he can start to work with and mold into being, like I said, this new generation of baseball and fans. Because, the guys that have been around forever, they're not going to be, watching and paying all this stuff to go watch your game and stuff. It's going to be the new era. And so I think the MLB is doing that. And I didn't even mention the guy that I had the headline here with is Paul Skeens. That, I don't know. I'm not a baseball historian. I'm new-ish to the sport. I don't know if there's been a player that's come in as the first overall pick and been as money as Paul Skeens has been for just being like a great baseball player pretty immediately and being really exciting, and also an all-star in his rookie season. Frankly, it's unbelievable to see. And Paul Skeens, I feel like I said, is that new face of guys that are coming up and being like, hey, these are the new generation of guys. So shout out baseball for actually doing good things when it comes to the mid-season portion of their sport and their all-star break. So hey, good shout out to them. So that'll do it for me on this Monday. It went really long with the Sixers talk, but like I said, they're losers, chronic losers. You have to talk about them. So with all that being said, I will see you guys on Wednesday. Like I said, tomorrow is a pre-recorded show. It was a great talk with my cousin Chris. He is a coach. Like I said, we kind of do the intro stuff, but it was fun talking to him about that aspect of just coaching football, what his thoughts are on college football. It was a really cool conversation. I appreciate him. Hopefully you get some of those down the road, some more of those. But with all that being said, I will see you guys on Wednesday. Hopefully with some maybe more fresh news, but it is the summer, so here we are. See you guys then. Bye.